we have one. It's finally here, an Nvidia 3070 GPU. We've got one the day of release. We've scrambled to do as much as we can to get these tests done ASAP for you. We've got all the benchmarks coming, all the features, all the unboxing, everything that you want to know about this amazing new card. So let's get straight into it. Although we might be a cryptocurrency mining channel here, we wanted to extend a graphics card shaped olive branch to all the gamers out there watching this, because we know this information is really important to you. So we wanted to do our best to get all this data and get it straight to you as fast as we can. And you never know, maybe after this we could be the only YouTube channel that's loved by gamers and miners. So please let us know in the comments if you really think that's possible. So before we get into the video, please make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. We've got loads of amazing videos planned over the next few weeks, including more benchmarks of more unique stuff that's coming out in the space. So if you're a gamer watching this, wondering what the hell am I doing on a crypto channel, go on, I dare you, give us a like. If you're a miner, guess what? Also, give us a like. So here it is. So it's a day of release and we managed to pull some strings to get the brand new Nvidia RTX 3070. So if you didn't know already, we've actually got two of the videos out there already reviewing the 3080 and the 3090 here and here. And now it's a turn of the 3070 to show us what it's really made of. Cue the unboxing. So here it is, the RTX 3070. This is the Asus OC edition with dual fans, which is a pretty premium version of the card. Now this card has some really interesting, unique features that we don't expect a lot of other 30 series cards to have, being a more premium version that Asus have come out with. The results might be slightly higher than an off-the-shelf 3070. Ultimately, time will tell, but we wanted to show you what the best of the book is going to be able to do and ultimately give you a good understanding of what else might be out there. So one of the first things to note is, of course, we have dual 8-pin sockets. So this is, of course, to do with the higher TDP of this generation of cards. It's going to be much more standard that dual 8-pin is a commonality. So compared to the 20 series, that wasn't common at all. It was different SKUs had different clock settings, which subsequently meant different TDPs, which subsequently meant different pin adapters. So here we have two sets of 8. Now, whether any other of the models this year or different manufacturer SKUs will have an 8 and a 6, time will tell. I would suggest most of them, like this, are going to have two 8 pins, which shouldn't be a problem for anyone running a normal PSU. So again, this being a more premium card, we've got the back plate of the card, which is a more premium feature for thermal distribution. Of course, this kind of helps dissipate the heat across the back plate. So you can see that's a nice metal card there. And the card generally feels really high quality with much more metal than you might get on some of the cheaper SKUs. Another thing, of course, which is really unique and kind of the unique feature to this card is we've reverted back to the 2000s and we have a manual overclock switch physically on the card. So as you can see here, there's a tiny little switch on the top, which ultimately means you can switch from basic settings to overclock settings. Of course, you're going to be able to see firsthand how this affects the results. And ultimately that's going to make this card a little bit more interesting, but should give you a pretty good understanding of some of the more interesting things some manufacturers are putting on this new generation of cards. So on the back of this card, of course, we've got the displays. So we've got 3 DisplayPort outputs and 2 HDMI sockets. This, of course, is slightly different than some of the older versions of the cards, which may still have had VGAs or DVI-D outputs. That's been stripped away, particularly on this card. Again, we'll see if that carries across other SKUs from other manufacturers, as their outputs might vary. But there's probably a good chance, particularly with this being PCIe 4, that people are going to be more inclined to go down display output for those higher resolutions. So just to give you a quick idea of the variations of SKUs from different manufacturers, and how different some of those can be, obviously, when we're here talking about the more unique features of this individual card. So this, of course, is a 3070, the main feature in today's video. Beyond that, careful, we've got, so this would be one of our more typically used bits of kit at the moment. So this is an RTX 2080 Super. So this is a Ventus model. So as you can see here, there's a 4-pin, a 6-pin and an 8-pin. And this, of course, is a slightly lighter card, a little bit less to it, but physically a very similar size. So you can kind of see the card there. Again, the outputs here, you've just got a single display port and HDMI, so some variation there. So this card, of course, we're going to see the results to see just how these cards compare. But the chip in the card, be it a 3070 or a 2080 Super, does not necessarily denote a physicality between them. So if we put that in perspective, this absolute weapon of a card, this absolute behemoth of something which is, you know, a good 1.5 times as big, is also a 2080 Super. This is an MSI Overclock Gaming Edition. It's an incredible card, right at the top of the price bracket for the old 2080 series. The cooling, of course, is much different, as are the outputs. But ultimately, in theory, this card, of course, with the new chipset, is going to be more powerful, even though it's much smaller. So the SKU of the manufacturer often has more to play than the actual chip itself. But of course, that denotes how much power is required, subsequently some of the features and the cooling mechanisms that are going to be needed. So this is a quick little overview of those differences, and hopefully that's been helpful to give you an idea of how this might sit physically in your case and the orientations of such. So as a gamer, what do these features mean to you? Well, obviously, this card's going to use a little bit more power than the last generation, which I think we're all kind of understanding about. Ultimately, that's probably not too much of an issue when we're just playing games. It's not the massive, big defining factor. Ultimately, we want more frames per second. We want better quality gaming. We might be able to want to push to maybe 1440p or 4K, which this card can, of course, do. So ultimately, a bit more power draw isn't going to be the end of the world for us. Now, we've got some other interesting features here which do affect things in a bit more detail. So the cooling mechanism is obviously going to be more of an interesting feature, because this, with having a backplate as well, is going to dissipate that heat a little bit better than some of the less premium versions of the card. So ultimately, the thermals on this are looking slightly nicer than other cards which we've tested. So if that's sitting in your case and you're gaming away, the thermals are going to be much better on this type of card than some of the other ones which we've seen. And then really, of course, one of the more interesting features is the fact that we've got 3 display output ports. So ultimately, you could have triple monitor all running at decent frame rates if, of course, that was something that you wanted to do. You might not be gaming in triple monitors on a 3070 at 1440p, but if you had a desktop that was split over 3 monitors, you've now got the full accessibility to go over 120 Hz when you're navigating around your system just fine, thanks to having 3 display outputs. So having more outputs, of course, is great for people with multi-monitor setups, and that could be something that could be really interesting for you. So one of the big things which people need to be aware of is the whole new generation of 30 cards runs on PCIe 4. So many of you that are watching this are only going to have PCIe 3 X16 slots on your motherboard, which ultimately means you are not going to be able to get the full horsepower of this card unless you've got a PCIe 4 compatible expandable PCIe slot. So ultimately, you might want to check your motherboard to make sure that you do have a PCIe 4 slot before you run out and buy this card. Otherwise, you might not get quite the performance boost that you wanted. So this is what you've all been waiting for. The benchmarks are here. We've ran everything through 3D Mark as quick as we could to get the main results you'd expect from Firestrike and all the normal stuff to give you a good benchmarking number. So here they are. So here we have our first results, obviously from 3D Mark on TimeSpy. So what we've done here is we've amalgamated other results from other cards, and we've ran these through the average scores that 3D Mark have published on their website to be able to kind of give a good comparison as to where things sit. So primarily here, these are the kind of figures that we're looking at. We're ultimately interested in the 3070, so straight out the box, we got a score of 12,718, so not too shabby at all, straight above the 2080 Super, but a little bit under the 2080 Ti. So knowing that the card is a 2080 Ti competitor, or so it's kind of marketed as, we did a little bit of playing with our baseline. So of course, because it's a slightly higher card out the factory, we got a little bit of extra juice there at 12.9. And then once we played with the overclocks, we're actually able to get that all the way up to 13,296. So ultimately, it comes in just a smidgen underneath a 2080 Ti in time spy. So what we've done is we've been able to effectively transition between baselines, overclocks, and other things to be able to make sure that we get a really good overview of what this card can do in direct comparison to other things. So now we're going to jump straight into Night Raid and see how things look there in a slightly different GPU test. So again, here you can see we've taken average scores from the different cards from the 3090 down to the 2070 Super. And again here, this is where our baseline kind of fell, 51373. Again, with a little bit of an overclock here, we ended up at 51443. So again, just a smidgen underneath a 3080 and a 2080 Ti this time performs a little bit better because of course this test benefits from a wider memory. So of course 2080 Ti's does have a larger amount of memory bandwidth. So ultimately that's why this card looks to be a little bit more ahead in this particular test. So moving into test number 3 out of 4, which is very, very specific to GPU performance. Ultimately, this is Firestrike. So if we jump straight on in here to see Firestrike, these are perhaps some of the most interesting results because again here we've got the baseline from the internet, which is 254. Our baseline is 2643, and then of course 2080 Ti here is 26862, and again here with our overclocks, as you can see from the top of the screen, which weren't crazy overclocks. We've not massively tweaked around with this to get the perfect overclock. We've just kind of done finger in the air, averagely okay overclocks of 100 core and 500 memory at 100% power. And that's actually ended up putting the 3070 with good overclocks above the baseline of a 2080 Ti by a good few hundred points there, nearly 500 points. So exactly what a lot of people have been expecting. It's a pretty strong effort indeed. And back to our final test now as we move on to Skydiver. So here again, we've got the results for Skydiver where we see a very similar type of result. We've got the baseline and then we've got the overclocks, which pushed up a little bit, still falling a sliver underneath a 2080 Ti in this instance, but ultimately giving a really good understanding of whereabouts this card falls in the line of all of that type of new graphics cards. So what does all this mean in a nutshell? Well, effectively, the 2080 Ti now has a very, very serious replacement. Ultimately, that's kind of what Nvidia seems to have done this time around. The 3070 seems to slot just a tiny little bit under a 2080 Ti, but with a bit of tweaking, a bit of overclocking, you can pretty much get yourself a card which offers virtually the same performance for well less than half the price. It's an incredible move forward, particularly for gaming performance. Again, as you can see from some of our other videos where we've tested this card for mining cryptocurrency, the jump in hardware hasn't necessarily been quite the same as it has for gaming, just due to the way the differences work. But specifically for gaming, which of course is what you guys are excited about in this video, it's a huge leap forward, and I'm very, very sure the 2070, or the 3070 rather, is going to be a very popular card indeed. So if you've enjoyed this content, guys, if you could give us a like and a subscribe, we've got some amazing new content coming for you, particularly with the release of AMD's big Navi cards. We're going to be putting those cards through similar paces, getting the mining results, getting the gaming results. We'll then be able to do some comparisons between 3070, 3080, big Navi, both for smaller and larger cards there too. So if you want some more quick, fun information to help give a good understanding of what's out there, then we can't wait to see you again in the next video.